morning, everybody. I'm looking around the room, the Zoom room, and I would like to greet all of you for today's session. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Sue Rosano. I am Deputy Managing Director by the Science to Business Marketing Research Center located at the Fachhochschule Münster, Münster University of Applied Sciences. And I'm a junior professor on entrepreneurship and international business development at this university. And we have done a lot of work on this engagement of universities in the past years. So the foundation of our research center, Science to Business Marketing Research Center, already says something about our engagement, how we wanted to know how to use marketing principles to transfer science from universities to the industry and actually to create impact. With the years, we have developed and we have seen that the power of applying principles of marketing, entrepreneurship, they could also change the society. They could also be applied to rural regions. And this is how we came with this idea, with this concept of ARDENT, entrepreneurship education for rural development. So what I want to present today is we have heard a lot about the statistics of rural region, the challenges, but I want to go into the driving side, into the new perspectives to open the topic, leave it open for you to have some views today with our panelists and then complement with our workshop and get your own ideas on the positive side, on the power of rural regions as engines of growth. Okay? So we know that rural areas in the EU, in the European Union, occupies 83% of the total area. Okay, so that's already something to say, okay, there is something we need to do, and there is potential because simply of the area. But we also see the percentage of population that is in rural areas. And that gives us some room to act and to think different and to think on what would be the role in the future economy. There needs to be a role and they are different. And instead of talking too much about their disadvantages, to talk about the problems that they could be facing, we should talk about the richness that this context brings. In this respect, they are actually our engines for growth into the green economy. And I want to give this definition so you have it for you for your further discussions. The green economy is an economy that results in improved human well-being and reduced inequalities over the long term, while not exposing future generations to significant environmental risks and ecological scarcities. So this transition to green rural economies is actually what we want to strive for. It is about improving people's lives and livelihoods, balancing these natural resources use, but maintaining the incomes and trading the risk of making a change with the opportunities that change will bring. Why would we say that the rural areas are these engines for this economy? Well, they have the water, the fisheries, most of the resources that make our life healthier, well-being, that brings these communities a balance. So they have a special role towards what we have been striving for, the green economy. And when we talk about the green economy, we also talk about green growth. Green growth that is characterized by low carbon, energy and resource efficient investments and practices, improving the resilience of the ecosystem, meaning that they could adapt to any change, sudden change. Just think about the COVID crisis. Okay, this green growth, how are we going to adapt to it? We also talk about green growth at the minimum that it prevents the loss of biodiversity and ecosystem services and will foster this coherence between environment and economic growth. And that is a challenge But that is something that on the one hand rural regions offer, but on the other we have to strive for growth. But if we keep this framework of green growth, then the steps will be a bit more reflective. The challenge might be higher, but the revenues or the benefits of it will be more sustainable. And finally, it deals with being social inclusive. And why do I mention that? It's because when we review documents on rural development of the future of rural regions, it also comes with digitalization. And yes, fantastic future that we could have and how the digital technologies could improve a lot of aspects of the rural regions. For example, e-learning, how it could make higher education available for other people. But we also need to think of all the resources and factors that need to be in place to be able to integrate this digital economy into these regions. And in this striving for this digitalization, for example, we also should know that not everybody would be able to play a role on it right away, either for the lack of education, either for the age group where they find themselves, okay, and also due to identity issues, which is also something we always need to keep in mind to respect. What would be or what are these territorially relevant sectors in the green economy that we strive for when we want to put them at the focus of rural regions? So we talk about a base on bioeconomy, wastewater buildings, transportation, tourism, and at the end the manufacturing and green research and eco-innovation. When we see all this pyramid, we also see a role from higher education, how they could engage to actually achieve this sustainable growth all the way to the top of the pyramid. And a final relevant aspect of rural regions playing an important role in this green economy, and those are some experiences and facts from Germany. When we see the share of green startups that are in rural areas of Germany, it's higher compared with cities, with different cities that are now getting these iconic cities for entrepreneurship, such as Berlin or Hamburg. Okay, particularly Berlin. But it is this rural region which is giving this inspiration and is giving this environment to come up with these green ideas, the green entrepreneurs, the green startups, and it could amount into this green economy. Now, what could support? There are many factors that support this transition, and they have been also documented at the policy level since 2014 and in the new policy from 2020. But cooperation approaches play a very important role here. And this is something that ARDENT, the project, has highlighted. These cooperation or cooperative measures can be important because they could support this shift. Okay? And we have gathered some experience into this methodology and this application when rural regions cooperate with universities, or better say, when universities engage with the community. So, for example, we have started not only to have our projects at Münster University of Applied Sciences, our projects with project-based learning methodology with companies, but we have also started to do community engagement projects. So I want to give you one example of a course on entrepreneurship, for instance, and what would be some elements. So if you are within universities, what would be some elements that for us have worked very well into bringing universities closer to the rural regions with an entrepreneurial mentality and getting younger generations inspired and aware of the uniqueness of these regions and the potential as well. So problem-based learning, very quick, it's more of a student-centered approach, okay? And it takes care of the experience that the student has while solving challenges that have ill-defined problems, okay? Very quick. But a key element of that is to not only get engaged into the skills development and see what are we doing, but to really provide the students with a foundation on what is the sustainability issues, green economy, identities of rural regions, and combine these theoretical aspects with action. That's how the university could play a great role in this respect. Those are some of the relevant transversal skills that we foster with this approach for our students, and how it is combined with other courses within the university, project-based learning, case studies, and a lecture. A very important element is mentoring, because it helps us in the quality assurance, and it also brings this strong research background from the mentors. And in this sense, what we do here at Munster University of Applied Sciences is to have different layers of quality assurance. On the one hand, the bachelor students do the project, they are the project staff, but then we engage master students as leaders, training these leadership skills and having research associates from our research center as supervisors of these projects. Meaning we don't just go to a lab to the community to see what we do and to see how the students learn, but it's really a commitment with the community to produce something of quality. So this is just an example of a structure of a problem using our scientific method on how we are going to solve it. How do we engage the students with the community? Okay, very important aspect 3 will be the teamwork, the interaction among the students, the mentors, but also the community. Because students, on the one hand, can learn more for the inspiration and the engagement and the awareness of the rural regions, and they could also think different and not think, I want to graduate and go to the big cities to have a job. But we want to inspire them and say, I want to graduate and I want to really build something. And we want them to feel like when they graduate, they are able to do something in the context where they are and not be willing to go, which is a problem and a challenge from rural regions. Usually graduates, that if they are in the nearby, they want to leave, or younger generations, they want to leave the rural regions, okay? So usually our courses are international population. And the key element for is to generate evidence and create trust. So if we do projects with companies within our region or with the community, we also keep the evidence professional to show the community that we have the experience, we have done something, and that they could come to us in in the university for solutions, for professional solutions. But I want to give this was just an example on how in this path towards the green economy, rural regions play a role, and that's what they could be considered, these engines of growth into this new economy or this green economy, this path towards the green economy. And I just share one example and one practice on how university could engage and play a role in this respect. But I am eager to learn more from you on who else should be engaged. Universities, policymakers, businesses, but this is something I want to learn from you. Thank you very much.
Well, today I want to talk about rural councils as one second, sorry. Here. Rural councils as methods for rejuvenation of rural areas, basically through cross-institutional collaboration. So in the ARDENT project, we have chosen this approach to generate a positive impact in 5 regions of across Europe. Basically by creating these councils that have been involving relevant stakeholders. But the question is why? Why would someone want to create these rural councils? Why would you establish a rural council with the effort and time that it takes? Well, I would say the easiest answer is for change, because these rural councils can bring change and reverse the negative trends that we all know that are affecting rural areas nowadays. These rural councils are basically small groups of key stakeholders who come together to act as basically catalysts of change in the rural region or area, usually or very often by means of entrepreneurship. And these rural councils can have like a plethora of benefits, but I would say the most important ones are, for example, getting a clear vision on the social and economic needs that a certain region has, and also the challenges that this region is facing. Having an environment of people who have the willingness to address these challenges, and also to find or to seek creative and innovative solutions, which will ultimately result on making these regions more attractive and actually improving the quality of life in all of them. Rural councils also enable cross-institutional collaboration by putting together a set of different entities that are working in the region, and makes them more connected to the issues that the region is facing. And also, when we involve in educational institutions or training institutions, basically what we're doing is we're putting training or education on the table, and this can change the whole picture, because through education we can develop skills, interpersonal skills, and also entrepreneurial skills, and we can, most importantly, I will say, we can affect positively the mindset of the people, and encourage them to take more risk and to seek for opportunities. So when we do all this, wheel starts to turn, and entrepreneurships start stimulating the rural areas, basically enabling the creation of new jobs, and ultimately, as I said, having a positive impact on the attractive of the area, and improving the quality of life and work there. But yeah, this is easy to say. How is this done? I know that when something entails certain complexity, there is not such thing as a one-size-fits-all solution, and balancing issues of a community is not easy, especially when we take into consideration that funding usually comes from large companies who have a lot of regulations and probably different interests or motivations. And since it's difficult, and we understand it's difficult, we piloted the creation of 5 ARDENT rural councils, following this 7-step approach that you are seeing on your screens. And I figured it might be useful to explain these and the steps, at least on the basic level, because this is the approach that we have followed. So the first step is to define and map your rural area, which means defining the physical area of work, basically. Where are we going to work? And also try to include details such as socioeconomic aspects or demographic details. Also taking into consideration logistics, infrastructures, or maybe administrative issues. Why? Because any potential member of this council will want to know about this. So it is important to have those details beforehand, and to be able to provide them to the potential members. The second step is to list the potential members that we want to, or that you want to include in your councils. And I would say the most important advice here is to start broad. I don't know, like at least 80 people, 80 potential contacts, maybe 100. The more, the better. And these contacts can be basically anyone who has an interest in the development of the region. It can be rural residents or rural entrepreneurs, public authorities that are working there on the local or on the regional level, NGOs, community leaders. It can be literally anyone who has an interest in the development of the region. The best way to start will be probably through networks. The networks of these organizations, of these institutions, universities, networks from the administration, But something important here is you should be asking yourself the question, will this potential member, will this person be interested in committing to this initiative, even if they know that they will not be taking any, let's say, financial benefits from it? Because that's important. You need to find people that are committed to the cause and that want to contribute without getting money from it. That's it. Also, one thing that could work here, at least at the start, in the start phases, would be the organic expansion approach, which means basically to start focusing on the people or on the members that are more accessible. And then once they are involved, once they are on board of the project, and start growing from there using their networks, their internal networks. The third step will be to put together your offer. What we mean by this is any potential member will have different motivations to form part of the council. So we need to understand these motivations, and also we need to understand in which way they will be involved in the council. What will be their role? The step number 4 will be prepare your documentation. I know that no one loves bureaucracy, but sometimes certain documents are necessary to make the process more, let's say, smooth. And these documents might depend. I would say they are different depending on the on the situation, but there are a few documents that are always in place, and they can help a lot with the process. And those will be most probably the letter of intent, which is nothing else but a statement of the willingness to take part into the initiative. And then I would say the commitment agreement, which is a document that includes the specific responsibilities that each member will be taking. None of these documents are legally binding, and their only purpose is just to align all the stakeholders involved, basically to set the basis of the collaboration and of the initiative. Once we have the list of members or potential members and the documentation, it is time to send the collaboration invitations. I would say here that these invitations need to be as much targeted as possible. They need to be personalized because every potential member, as I said, have different motivations or reasons or takeaways from the initiative. So we need to target them as much as we can. And then after this, once the invitations have been sent, it is time to hold the first meeting. This is the kickoff meeting, and it can be online or offline. Something that is important in this meeting will be to introduce the members to each other, and also maybe to open or to take the opportunity to open the initiative to other members that have not been involved yet, but they can have a role in the council. Some other things to discuss during this meeting will be the main issues that the stakeholders are facing. What are the challenges that the region is facing? What specific objectives and responsibilities will each member have? Also, something else to discuss will be the preparations for the rural consultation event. I will go into this in a second. I will explain the rural consultation event. And again, this can be an opportunity to connect, to set the basis. So collecting feedback is important in this meeting. And also, you could take this chance to make the members sign the commitment agreement. Again, not legally binding, but it is a good first step. And lastly, the last step that we followed, and that you should follow, is to monitor and evaluate your council. So once the council has been formed, it is important to keep track of the progress. And for this, the easiest thing will be to have regular meetings in place where the members can join and can update each other on the progress of their activities they are undertaking. With this, following this approach, we build, basically our partners build 5 rural councils in different regions of Europe with the aim to bridge the gap between stakeholders and to enable collaboration between them with the ultimate goal of have a positive impact in these regions. The kickoff meetings were successful, and they helped us understand what were the main challenges what were the main priorities of the rural areas that each group of stakeholders had identified. I mentioned earlier that I mentioned the rural consultation events. What are the rural consultation events? Well, these are basically events in which the council meets with any stakeholder actually who might be interested in the development of the area. So the target group is the same as the member of the councils. So for these rural events, rural consultation events, you will probably invite rural entrepreneurs, rural residents, again, NGOs or community leaders, business organizations. So everyone who might have an interest and who also might be facing any difficulty. That's the main outcome of this event is the identification of the challenges that are affecting the region in that moment. Because this identification of challenges will be the first step towards the start of the activities of the council. So the council will start working on solving these challenges. As you can see in the slide, these are just a few numbers about the things that we have done. So 5 rural consultation events were organized, and in them 22 challenges were identified in 9 topics, including topics such as, I don't know, education, funding, digitization, also bureaucracy, and some others. Over 60 participants attended to the meetings in total. And something important to say here is that each of the rural councils counted with 15 members on average. Some had more, some had a bit less. That depends a lot on the circumstances. And again, as I was saying before, the rural councils are meant to be small group of stakeholders, key stakeholders. So it can be bigger or it can be smaller, that's fine. One of the most interesting things that we discovered with these rural consultation events was that even though the places in which these events took place were really distant from each other, some of the challenges that were identified were common, without regard of the area where they were happening. So one of the things that I thought was important here was to mention some of the challenges that were identified as common challenges across Europe. And of course, some of them had to do with COVID-19, the pandemic. So everyone had to move toward online life, let's say, and not everyone was ready for that. So people had to learn about it. People had to adapt, and some did, some others didn't. Also, the business owners were hit really hard by regulations, by restrictions from the governments due to the pandemic, and many of them didn't survive the pandemic at the first stages of the pandemic. And that is normal. That's a challenge that many rural areas have been facing. And some other challenges that were identified were the lack of entrepreneurial skills, like as a general trend in these areas. So people really struggle to understand concepts such as market analysis or how to price their products properly. But also there is a lot of fear of taking risks. So people want to stay on track, and this was one of the most common challenges. People is afraid to do something because they fear failure, which makes them lose a lot of opportunities, many opportunities. Lastly, I want to say that another challenge will be the lack of appreciation for the local products. So people don't usually believe in the quality of their products. They don't have confidence on that, which leads to sometimes selling these products for a really low price. And that doesn't help these regions. That's a problem. That's a generic problem, systemic problem. But also there are some other more tangible problems such as infrastructure or logistics. Some rural areas have really bad connections, bad say transport routes or machinery. You might find out that some of these issues are also present in your regions or not. That will depend. And I will just finish here. But I want to say that I think one of the main learnings here is that, and I think we will all agree, there is no rural rejuvenation, there is no rural development without cooperation. and without having a common approach. And this is the approach that we decided to follow. Rural councils is the approach that the ARDENT consortium follow. And you can also go for your own approach, but if you're interested in replicating this approach that helped us a lot and in the end it worked, I invite you to visit our website. I will drop the link in the chat right after my presentation, and download all the reports that the project has produced until now. And thank you very much. And with this, I think that this was all from my end, and I will give back the floor to Dr. Surosano. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jose. So you hear me well? Yes.
Yes.
The typical question, right? The question of the century. Okay. We are going to start a discussion panel with experts, more of a conversation on, because Jose said there is no development and no advancement without cooperation. So it always comes the question not who is to blame, but who is to really count on, especially when we see that some individuals in rural regions have a fear of failure. The environment needs to provide extra in this respect. But we're going to go through those questions, and I would like to welcome to my panelists, Mr. Tomás Cusio and Nuno Vieira Ebrito. Did I say it right?
Yeah, my name is correct. Hello, everybody, and thank you for the invitation to be here with you. Hello.
Okay.
Hello, my name is correct. You should speak Portuguese, I think. Nice to this invitation. It's a pleasure to be here.
Okay. It's also a pleasure for me to be here. So let's start with when it comes to entrepreneurship, we see that it is essential for economic and for social development in rural areas, but it won't flourish unless many actors participate. But in this sense, let's start with us and our institutions. So to what extent can the university have a stake here? You can start, yeah, Mr. Vieira Ebrito. Like the students, if nobody comes,
I was just expecting that was Thomas, but I start.
Yes.
Okay, we have two cases, two very interesting cases, just in our institute, in our university, and I think that will be very nice to share with you. Those are different, those two cases. One is most directly with all the environment issue and with companies. It's just very similar what about you spoke some time ago about the importance of small problems of the entrepreneurs. And the way that we university could help them. I don't know if I can share just it's just a figure that I have here, and I try to.
Yes, you can share.
Yeah. Okay. This was an example that we have 2 years ago. The project was called IMER. The name is Entrepreneurship in rural areas. It was just a local in a region of Alto Minho in the north of Portugal. And what we intend to do was solve small or big problems from the entrepreneurs, the entrepreneurship. And what we do was just in the university put in the disposition of the entrepreneurs a mentor, and the problem is the presence of a mentor, and with the entrepreneur and the mentor do it together an action plan. This action plan was due with different areas from the university. I can say that was, for instance, from marketing in the area of digital marketing, or in the area of innovation of new products, or in the area of certification of the products, and with a diagnosis of the problems of the different areas of the different entrepreneurs trying to find a solution. This was so interesting that we are now starting Polytechnic Institute with the Incubo, that is the incubator of companies that is now dealing with coordinating this project. It was so interesting that we have a lot of new companies, a very interesting number, and I can give you after the numbers because I have it here. New numbers of companies, new numbers of new jobs. Considering that we are in an area of small, very small companies, and in this case was very interesting because we developed a lot these kind of companies. And we have another example, a second example that was now creating in the most northern area of Portugal, just in the border of Spain, in Malgaço, a new innovation research center. And this new innovation research center allows to have there high qualified resources, PhD, that are together with these new companies, and these companies are very connected with wine, or green wine, and with meat, with agro-food companies. That allows that to with them in partnership, in very close partnership, and develop and solve a lot of problems that they have. Sometimes the problems are not so difficult. Sometimes the problem are they don't have they are not enough qualified to see the way to solve it, or some of them they don't have conditions to go and trying to find the best financial conditions to do a loan or do some or be candidate of any project. So university, trying to find my speech, university is very important because it has a lot of competencies that are very important in rural areas, and they can be matched with the problems that the entrepreneurship has in the region.
Okay, thank you very much. So it is about the competencies that could be matched. It is through the education mission, for example, that they could act, and the qualified resources that they could offer, if I understand right. So what would be your view on Mr. Couture?
Okay. Well, I actually agree to the opinion of Professor Vieira about the role of, let's say, the mentors, yes, who acts as the people supporting maybe not just the entrepreneurship, but the interrelations between the universities and between the rural regions. Well, what I can share with you in this respect is that our case, the case of Poland, it shows that this can also work and function well in terms of so-called remote centers. Some time ago, well, it was still allowed. In our national context, it was possible to organize the remote centers, and those remote centers of the university, they were located in different regions, because we here represent the Malopolska region, just like probably in Portugal or Germany you have very similar as Münsterland, or in Portugal this region that is also very similar in terms of the territory. So we have there were located many remote centers, and I think from my point of view, this it's not the clustering or clusters. However, the relations between the local people, the local authorities, in my opinion, it was much easier. We did not do any research. It was obvious that those relations are very close. And this is also somehow the case of clustering. The closer you are, this regional context, it matters a lot in terms of relations with the rural regions. So that is one thing. It's maybe more spontaneous that came to my mind now. In terms of this issue of also how the universities, if the universities can act as the stakeholders, well, surely yes. That's the university's role is always perceived into streamings. Yes, one is research, second is education. We concentrate here on the educational context, as Professor Rosano mentioned before. We can speak about this problem-solving attempt to the students' learning, or young adults. We also define them in such a way. So this is something the university is, of course, very strongly perceived from that part. So educational activities and research activities. In this case, I think, well, I have also found some examples of how the university can impact the rural development. In terms of research, that is, let's say, for example, some ideas that maybe the political ones, the policy-oriented ones, when we can give support the regions with the expertises, and that is one thing for sure. The educational activities is, I mentioned those remote centers. That was really working, in my opinion. That was really working. Well, it's the distance is always a problem, a barrier. And we all, of course, we have this third mission of the university to get engaged with the environment. And in this case, I would say that the project, like the was presented by Jose, this project is showing that there can be some platform of the communication, and there can be some institutional support by the universities towards the rural development. So, well, what else? It's also something absolutely different, maybe, than what we speak about, is that we have this depopulation, as you meant. So, well, going to statistics, 30% of people in Europe. That's true. Yeah, I think within the Europe, 30% of people live in countryside. About 30 live in suburbs. So parts of urban areas. So some of the people, they move to countryside now. That's the example of Poland. I believe the very similar situation is probably in Germany. And some of those newcomers, they are the people who can also make changes, and they believe in the growth. So that's maybe also the possibility of the impact, even when we speak about the universities. Okay, maybe that's just the starting point.
Yes, but I think just concluding, the universities have a role, but they need to do efforts to come closer, to be aware that they need to come closer, that at the end is also a people's game. And it's also a very strong role for the mentors that mediate these education projects. And perhaps for a later question, not now, but it would be, are we ready as academics, are we ready to take on that challenge? Maybe a quick reflection. Are we ready? Are we prepared? And we want to be that engaged. But we talk about the agency of the universities, like that they could act, but to what extent is actually policy playing a role? Like we could see some examples of initiatives that take place in spite of the policy. But we always talk about the role of the government and the role of other actors like business. So the question would be more, who else plays a role here? What's the role of business? What would be the role of policy?
Maybe not me, or sorry.
Yes.
Just to exchange maybe the order. Well, I actually had the paper about the role of the policymakers, let's say. Some research, well, shows, let's say, that this is often the matter of money, unfortunately. So we have this financial issue. And unfortunately, the financial streams, they go mostly to the cities, of course, and not so very obviously they go to the rural areas, which is a problem, and this is surely the policy. So that is one thing. So to be more conscious, aware of the policymakers, that the rural areas, they start to again to play the very important role. I believe that this is due to the digitalization as well. So to some extent, let's say the policymakers, they can support the rural areas development. I do not know to what extent. I don't know any evidences, any statistics. But what comes from the evidence we have from the projects and from the practice, well, the money sometimes play not so big roles. So the biggest players, let's say, in the development of the rural areas, at least this is the Polish issue, are business actors. This is something that we have concluded according to the results of our research. So this is the most important stakeholder, I would say, in the development of business areas here in Poland. So business sector. And if we make the division between small and medium, not obviously small, micro and small companies, because medium-sized companies, in some cases, according to some researchers, it is closer for them to the big companies than to small ones. So if we speak about the micro companies and small companies, so in the opinion of most of the people we have asked for that, they told us, they gave their feedback that this is the most important actor. So small and micro and small business, because the people just set up, they have these companies, they set up companies, startups, and this changes the life in the countryside. The big companies, in my opinion, and also as some examples show, we also once had a paper about this, they give the greatest impact on the rural areas. So big companies, they change absolutely the countryside life. They offer workplaces. They very often give the representation to the community boards in the rural areas. So they create the policy in the rural areas. So if some rural areas are happy because they have big businesses there, then it's absolutely fantastic for the development of the rural areas. That's okay. At least the issue of Poland. Oh, okay, that's enough, maybe.
No, that's interesting. Business to be considered the most important actor and how their activity could also drive policy in that respect. So, what would be your view on this?
I mostly agree with Thomas. I think that this is common in Europe, this kind of intervention. But I must say that all that we do has a strong policy issue. And for rural areas, I may say that we should have a positive discrimination policy. And for create, we see that we have a depopulation, ageness in rural areas, and to increase young people to go to those areas, to increase new companies, to increase new way of produce or new way of marketing or commercialization. We should have policies that increase the attractiveness of the people to be present in this region. In the same project that we that we did it 2 years ago, 1 year ago, the most important problem that they have, the companies and the entrepreneurs, was financial problems and the way that they could achieve to those financial funds. And if we don't have any positive discrimination, because in some time those entrepreneurs don't have enough qualification and enough capacity to be just near of the power of the policy power. In this case, we don't have, we could not have rural areas, more strong rural areas with more competitiveness and with more capacity. Just one example. Now in this time of COVID and disease and pandemic, one of the most important problems that we have in these rural areas was from micro and small companies, because some of them has commercialized in a small chain in the region. They don't have any logistic or distribution channels, and they are more conditionated with the commercialization in just a region. And you see, we don't have tourism, we don't have internal or external tourism. We are confined at home, and all that kind of production has a lot of problems because they could not sell it. So we need more organization. We need more digitalization, and I think that we can go on after. We need more digitalization to enlarge the marketing channels, and we need a new way that could strong rural areas. So public policies are very, very, very important to put a positive environment to business, and I think that now they just start to see that it's a very good and positive inversion to invest in rural areas than to invest in suburban areas with a lot of problems with transport and with not in the countries that are not sustainable, because in this case we don't have a very equitative conditions between our population.
Okay, so we have a conclusion on the policy level that they provide a positive environment. When there is a positive environment, generates trust, and this trust then attracts some other to come, and at the end is the generator of resources, which also Mr. Cusio highlighted, they also provide the resources, the financials to also generate some change. And both of you came across to topics like digitalization. So I would like to give the last part of this panel on this topic. I will give each one of you 2 minutes to close on this and say, okay, taking into consideration the universities, the policy level, the business, and now it comes the technology aspect or the digitalization. So to what extent is this really a promise for improving rural areas or an utopian idea that a lot needs to be built before we really bring it? So I will give 2 minutes and I will just let you know, okay, to close it. Good. Whoever would like to start.
Okay, I can start. We change again. I think we can speak about everything is black or everything is white. We are in the middle. It's just not only utopia, but it's also a necessity. You see that if you speak now in the rural areas has a lot of agriculture and agro-food areas. You need now in agriculture, you need now digitalization. You need now intensification because diseases, pests, and the problem of climate changes. So digitalization is determinant to better ways of production. So you need it. The problem with that is that if to have a very good digitalization, you need to create conditions of competencies for all the population. And here, university has a lot of can do a lot for increase capacity of rural areas. Is one of the most important points for us universities to interview in these areas. Digitalization is determinant for new ways of commercialization. Digitalization is determinant for tourism, for knowing more our region and coming people from other areas to develop our point of view. So I don't think that now we can discuss if digitalization is needed or not. What we can do now is how to apply better digitalization and how you can create the better conditions and capacities for rural population to achieve this opportunity that now we have in our countries.
Okay, great.
2 minutes.
Thank you very much. And yes, we go to the closing comment on this.
Okay, thank you. Well, yes. It has been summed up, so there is nothing to say more. I must say. Yes. So okay, 2 minutes. We have heard everything about what kind of determinants which relates to digitalization can impact positively on the development of rural areas. What else I could say is maybe we have this detracting tourism when we speak about the Barcelona and some cities, so which means that is good for the rural areas. Let's say it's promising, that is one thing, and digitalization can obviously help in this. I would say it's not an utopia, it's not promising, it is happening. That's maybe something that I could add to this discussion. It is happening. The percentage of the people having access to internet rose dramatically. So it's really fantastic to have the access. People, what else? And that's the last point maybe, is that I would also maybe go into the mindset that many people, when they are the new generations, they perceive differently the rural areas and they can come back. And I perceive that is why you have noticed such a big growth of startups in Germany, that most of them comes from the rural areas. So that's, in my opinion, promising. So that is not promising, but this is happening as the evidence.
Okay, so that was really nice to be able to come back to the first question. What's the role of the university when we see all those actors? And they could provide the conditions, they could build the competences in the people, but very important, I really like this, affect the mindset and create this rural entrepreneurial culture. So some work and promise to do. Thank you so much for the participation. I hope the participants have enjoyed. And we will go to the next activity. Thank you very much.
Yes, so now we have a workshop on community-based learning. So I want to introduce Julia Stroila from Paco School in Münster, and she will be facilitating the workshop. So hi, Julia. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Jose. Hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be here. And yeah, now we move to the workshop. What that means is that we also want to hear your perceptions on entrepreneurship in rural areas. And for that, I would just like to share a link with you in the chat that everybody can access. And we would like to hear from you. What are the main challenges in your own rural areas? So please, you can write one word or two of these challenges, and yeah, we can share some perspectives on this. Okay, so we already have some keywords popping up. So we have local products promotion, attracting young people, infrastructure, entrepreneurial mindset, okay, investments in rural areas, yeah. What else? Somebody has written Peneda. Maybe that person can explain us a bit what's meant by that. Now it disappeared. Lack of support, okay. Finance. Critical mass. Infrastructure, again. So the bigger the word is, the more people have assessed it as a challenge in the rural areas. Outdated perceptions, okay, that has to do also with the entrepreneurial mindset that exists in a region. Digitalization, okay. Great, so we have identified a few challenges that you're being confronted with. However, these challenges might persist also in the next years. That doesn't seem that they're ready to use solutions. But what if we have a different scenario? And imagine you are already 10 years from now, and you have access to all the emerging technology, for instance, drones, e-health, e-education, advanced communication techniques. How can these emerging technologies can be used to solve the challenges that you have mentioned? But in the same time, we also want to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals and achieving the 2030 agenda. So how can these two be combined? And now we have a challenge for you, beside these real challenges, in that way that we want you to collaborate, because we have discussed already how important is collaboration, and that rural development cannot exist without collaboration. So we want that we work together on one challenge, and by combining it with an emerging technology, how we can solve this challenge. And also another question that we have to consider, do we need to engage any stakeholders at all? Do we need this collaboration to still happen? Do we need to work with the universities, businesses, governments, or society? How will this scenario in 10 years from now will look like? And here I would like to ask Sue to support me. And we have thought of breaking everybody in rooms.
4 groups. Exactly. I will create 4 breakout rooms. You will suddenly fly into your group, and I will copy and paste the instructions in the chat for everybody. So how can we solve a challenge with one of the technologies, right, Julia?
Yes. So the challenge will be assigned to each group, and you
I
have
will post them. Sorry, I'm posting them here. And each challenge, they are the challenges that you mentioned. So the main 4, I list them here. So you will go to a team and the Zoom room, sorry. The Zoom room will be number 1 or 2 or 3 or 4. So if you go to the Zoom room 1, you deal with entrepreneurial mindsets and using one of those technologies. If you go to Zoom room 2, you talk about the investments and how you can solve the challenge with one of the technologies, like artificial intelligence. What else? You had some others mentioned. You
drones.
mentioned
Yes, I
others,
will
drones.
group. I will send a picture.
We can send a picture.
Of
Okay.
the 5 main emerging technologies, and the take here is that you will have 10 minutes to solve this challenge. And we will come back together here. We will have a very short pitching of the solution, and we will also have a voting in the end. So who has the most creative solution to the rural challenge? So is everybody ready? Okay, great. Welcome back, everybody. Now we would just like to hear what you have discussed. And I was thinking maybe Team 4 would like to share how they will solve in 10 years from now the infrastructure challenge with any of the emerging technologies.
Well, hi everybody. I am Roberto from Portugal. We didn't reach to a solution, of course, but Team 4 talked a little bit about what could be the main infrastructure that we would need. So, and high-speed internet was maybe the critical one. So if we talk about, working from home or blended learning or, distance learning, let's say, we would need that. So maybe, satellite internet could help us. Of course, we would have the need to build rural creative technological hubs to distribute locally and to help people to, really interact in a more immersive way. So if we had high-speed internet, maybe we could feel a little bit better the presence of the others being in a distance. Maybe I will stop with that. Maybe the colleagues would like to interact. We had the pleasure to meet Philip from Germany, Chris from Australia, and from Peneda, Portugal. So Portugal was in majority this time. So thank you.
Thanks, Roberto. Yeah, actually, that was my question, because it's quite an international round here. I was wondering if this specific challenge is prevalent in all your countries, or was it more specific to a country or so?
Well, maybe Chris would like to answer. So Australia.
Yeah, I mean, I live in Australia, so I guess it's a bit of a different perspective. The internet issue in rural areas is still a problem. I think, like a lot of people have said around the EU, and I think democratizing that access to the internet and high-speed internet is really important. I think one point of difference would probably be in Australia, the distances are quite large. So some of the people that I work with are hundreds or thousands of kilometers apart, and the largest towns or cities between them could be maybe 10, 20,000 people. So that distance, I think, is a particular challenge in Australia, where I'd be interested if self-driving cars or some other way to transport people in a more efficient way and safer way would be possible. That could provide a lot of benefit in the Australian ecosystem.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Chris, thank you so much for sharing that. yeah, it's very interesting. As we see, we have different contexts, and despite that, still facing the same challenges, right? Okay, so we would just like to hear some other team. So who would like to share with us their challenge and their solution? Team 2 or team 1 or team 3?
We see some interesting comments here on the drones might be useful, digital marketing.
Yes.
Yes, great.
I can tell our small discussion what we tell it's important. Yes, the digital marketing, it's very important to sell the product. So it's what it's important to us, and the promotion in the social network of the partners. So we must put our information in the network media of the other partners, and it's important if we can sell and give information about the other products. It's no fundo, it's bet in the networking and work together.
Okay, Sonia, thank you for sharing. In which team were you? You were in team number 3, right?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I would just, because looking with one eye on the clock, we should be finishing our session now. So I would like to pass over the virtual stage to Jose.
Yes, thank you very much, Julia. And thank you for the workshop. I hope you have all enjoyed it. In general, I hope you have all enjoyed the session. I just want to close it now and to thank you for coming today and for staying here with us, even if you're from Australia, which is, I can imagine, really late there. So thank you very much, and I hope this has been somewhat useful for you and that you feel more motivated to start helping in the development of your rural regions and areas. So thank you very much, everyone, and have a nice day.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody. Yeah, thank you.